Okay, hello everyone. Hello Passivhaus friends. I believe we're live now on Facebook for our next little session on the benefits of Passivhaus design. So just a little note, if you've missed the first part, the unit 1, which was a fortnight ago, a couple of weeks ago, no problem. You can always catch up on that on our website. The first part is there as a free session. So if you want to see the unit 1, where I talk about a little bit about Smart Plus Academy, who we are, what we do, and where I talk about the Passivhaus standard, then you can catch up on that on our website. So my team will send the link in the comments and here in the chat, and you can find that there. Today, we will talk about the benefits of Passivhaus part 2, where I will really dive deep into what the benefits are for you, especially if you are an architect, a designer, or an engineer who wants to go into Passivhaus and not really sure what the benefits are for you. So that's what we will look at today. And I will start the presentation, and then we will answer some questions afterwards. Good. Again, welcome to the benefits of Passivhaus design. This is our unit 2, a small presentation about what you can expect from when you become a Passivhaus designer and what the benefits are for you when you design to the Passivhaus standard. Good. So what are the benefits? To understand the benefits of Passivhaus, we need to understand why buildings are so impactful. So that's the first thing we need to understand to really know what the benefits are. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is our behavior around buildings, and that we spend an average over 90% of our time indoors. That's 21.5 hours. And out of that, you spend around 8 hours in your bedroom, around 8 hours at work, and around 6 hours doing other things like cooking, maybe watching TV or something like that. I always thought, that's not really true for me. I'm an outdoor person. I like to spend time outside. But if I think about it that way, that I would have to spend 2.5 hours outdoors every day, then I'm thinking it might be really true for me, because if I try on a normal day where I work, because I work indoors, to spend 2.5 hours outside, I would already have to make quite an effort for that. It might be a little bit more on the weekends or on the holidays, but in average, that might be true for me. So this is maybe something that you can think about. How much time do you spend in your home or in an indoor environment? The problem with that is that our indoor environment is not our natural habitat. Yeah, and that has a health impact, or can have a health impact, because we're now living in an artificial environment. Then, because we spend so much time indoors, buildings are impactful also from a comfort side point of view. So because we're spending so much time indoors, the indoor environment shouldn't give us any cause for health risks. Yeah, it should be a healthy indoor environment. We shouldn't have any air pollution. We shouldn't have any mold risks. And our indoor climate must be comfortable. Yeah, so comfort is often seen as a luxury, but it's not, because as soon as we come out of our comfort zone, we have to adapt to our external environment, and adaptation is always causing stress on our body. Yeah, so we're sweating, we're shivering, our body has to work. And it's not a problem for people that are young and healthy and fit, but it might become more of a problem when you're getting older or a bit sick, or maybe for the really young ones, the little babies. For them, it's actually quite hard to adapt to their environment if the surrounding is not comfortable. And our feelings and sensations that are our sensor for thermal comfort, if you're shivering, if you're cold, if you have goosebumps, then your body tells you something is not right. So comfort really means that our body is not under stress, it's at rest. So it's an indication that everything is okay. So why comfort has to do with health, or is health, is because first, everything is comfortable. We see that as luxury, but really is an indicator of a healthy environment that we live in. Then things become uncomfortable, maybe not so risky, but just not nice. Then they can become unhealthy. Then they can become a health risk, a health threat. And in the end, it could even kill us. So heat waves in Europe have killed many people where they couldn't adapt to the temperatures around them anymore. They didn't have air cons, and old people, they just couldn't adapt anymore, and it got really dangerous for them. So remember, comfort is not a luxury, it's a health requirement. Then when we look at buildings from a sustainability point of view, why are they so impactful from a sustainability point of view? So first, we want to look at more like humans. Why are they impactful? Because every day, each person on Earth puts 15.5 kilos of CO2 into the atmosphere. That's equivalent to the naturally CO2 occurring in 100,000 cubic meters of air. So I try to make that a little bit more visible for you. So this is the 100,000 cubic meters of air, and this is a size of a 2-story house. So this is the amount of air that we're polluting each person on Earth each day. Yeah, so that's a lot. And I think this is something to think about. In Australia, you're most likely to adding 1 to 2 times your own body weight of CO2 in the atmosphere, because you are a more developed nation creating more CO2. So something to think about, and maybe trying to take a little bit of action against that. But this is not directly related to buildings. This is more to what every person does, but obviously has to do with how we live. And now I want to bring it down a little bit to a building-related sustainability aspect. And I want to show you the global share of final CO2 emissions of buildings. So this is from the year 2017, but I've just looked it up. It's still valid in that way. The latest figures are very similar. So what we're looking at here is the share of CO2 emissions for different sectors. And it says here that the construction sector, the building and construction sector, is responsible for 39% of the CO2 emissions. Yeah, that's over a third. That is massive. All come from the building and construction industry. The others are other industry, transport, but the building industry has a big impact. Then we're breaking that down into residential, non-residential, and the construction industry itself. So we can have a little bit of a look at what the percentages are here. So what is the message behind that? The message is that the building and construction sector is the key player to secure a sustainable future. Yeah, we have so much potential here, what we can do, that we should use. We should reduce the energy consumption and make buildings the power station of the future. That's how we can tackle this. Yeah, so that's why buildings are so impactful. Let's have a little bit of a closer look at the share of total domestic fuel and power in Australia, some data from 2014. And here it says what a building itself uses the energy for. Yeah, so when we're looking at the use of the energy of a building, what is the energy used for? And we can see here that the biggest part is space conditioning. The second conditioning, we're talking about heating and cooling. So that's what we call conditioning. Then water heating is a big part. And then the smaller part is cooking, appliances, and lighting. And combined, space conditioning and water heating are responsible for 63% of the domestic fuel and power consumption. Yeah, so that is something we need to keep in mind. And what Passivhaus can do now, it can reduce that conditioning from 40%, what we have currently, to 4%. So we can save 90% of that energy. And domestic hot water by a third, roughly by a third, from 23 to 9%. So what we're saying here is that Passivhaus can cut the domestic fuel and power into half. So with a Passivhaus, you would have half your power bill to pay in the end, because lighting, cooking, and appliances, if you're not using particularly energy efficient appliances, which is not prescribed by Passivhaus, then that would stay the same. But we can see that our domestic hot water and our conditioning would be cut back drastically. So Passivhaus savings for space conditioning is 36%, for domestic hot water is 14%, so a total of 50% of savings. So we could cut back our bill from $2,800 to $1,400. This was a typical number that we pulled out from some reports for a typical home in Australia at that time. So Passivhaus savings are half of your bill. You can save that with Passivhaus, and this is beautiful. Then our next part, we want to look at why buildings are so impactful from an economic point of view or affordability point of view. And here we have to look at what we're investing in. And it's very clear that with Passivhaus, we're investing into quality. And that means that we have a performance that we're modeling. So we have a outcome. We're building our building as we model it, and we're getting it as we model it. So it becomes very predictable, not just the building costs, but also the operational costs. So we have something that we can look forward to, and we have a quality building that we can rely on. The second part is that we gain financial control. So we have control over the construction costs because we can plan it ahead. We never have any control over the energy prices, yeah? But energy efficiency gives us control because we're now not so dependent on the fuel prices anymore. If we have a small bill and a small amount of energy that we need to pay, it doesn't matter so much how much the fuel prices are fluctuating. And energy efficiency also means that we don't burn our money for heating and cooling, and that we have no risk of fuel poverty. So fuel poverty, we typically talk about when we can't afford to condition our buildings anymore. So this has happened in Europe already, where people can't afford to heat or cool their buildings, and then let's say they move into a shopping center because there it's nice and conditioned in the heat of the summer, but they can't afford that to do them themselves. Or now I've heard in Europe, because the gas prices have gone up so much, people only heating one room of the home. Obviously, that's not ideal. A, we're not comfortable in our home anymore. And B, we have a lot higher risk of mold growth if we're leaving the rest of the house cold. So there are problems and we can avoid that. So in the end, we get comfort with a clear conscience. That's what we can have with Passivhaus. So now we wanted to talk about the benefits. Now we know why buildings are impactful and what they do, but now what are the benefits of Passivhaus? So with Passivhaus, we're building healthy and comfortable buildings and a healthy and comfortable indoor environment for your client. We are reducing drastically the risk of respiratory diseases and asthma. We've heard so many reports that people moving into a Passivhaus feel a lot better, especially if they have allergies and things like that. We're creating sustainable homes. So Passivhaus, as I've already explained, uses 90% less heating and cooling energy than comparable new builds. And we're creating affordable homes. So Passivhaus doesn't have to cost more. And in fact, with an optimized design, your clients can save money from day one, because we said now we have the reduced power bills. And these days we have incentives, we have green loans where we have presentations on as well. So if you want to check that out, go onto our website. We have a whole unit about, is Passivhaus affordable? We're talking about green loans, and that is really interesting to have. So we can really be optimized from day one. So these were the benefits for your clients or for the people that live in the Passivhaus. But what are the benefits for you as a building professional, for you as an architect? Why should you go into the direction of Passivhaus? And there's quite a few benefits that I want to talk about now. With Passivhaus, your project becomes quantifiable. Yeah. So we can now we can compare products. So we can compare product 1 versus product 2 in terms of sustainability and economics, because we're putting our building into a software, and that software tells us exactly how much energy we're saving with a certain measure. And now we can say, does it make sense to replace product 1 with product 2? How much energy do I save, or how much more do I have to pay for these products? And we can determine when a product creates a return on investment. Then there's no more guesswork. Yeah, Passivhaus takes the guesswork out of the design. We can accurately calculate our energy consumption with the Passivhaus software. It's called PHPP, Passivhaus Planning Package. And we don't have to guess what the performance will be. We know it exactly. We will also save money for our client. With that software that I just mentioned, each element can be economically optimized and the measures can be improved. So I believe, Daniel has worked on some projects where he was able to save the clients a lot of money because he was able to optimize certain elements for performance. Then we have an optimization process. I think that all plays in that part. So what we do in Passivhaus is often we spend a little bit more time on design. Okay, so we need to make sure that we know how everything works. We need to draw details, but that makes the building process cheaper. Yeah, of course, the design process maybe becomes a little bit more lengthy, but the building process is a lot cheaper. And the building process goes without too many upsets. Yeah, it goes a lot smoother because everything has been planned meticulously. And our products are optimized for performance. Then for you as a building professional, the certification is great, and the building certification is great as well for your client. The certification happens by this internationally recognized body, the PHI, which is the Passivhaus Institute. It sits in Germany. They oversee all the certifications, whether your certification to become a designer or the certification of homes is all overseen by this internationally recognized body. And if you're certifying your homes, that increases the property value. We've seen that energy efficient buildings have an increased sales value and they very sought after. So buildings like that are very valuable. And we know that this building needs to fulfill all the criteria as defined in the standard. So your client has the certainty that everything works as planned. So being a Passivhaus designer obviously is also one of the benefits because it shows that you invest in your education. People know that you've got the knowledge and it confirms your knowledge. And it also shows that you care. Yeah, it shows that you care about your client. It shows that you care about your client's health and comfort, but also shows that you care about the environment, about sustainability. And that is the beauty of being a Passivhaus designer. It gives you credibility. You're sort of internationally accredited, and that's the beauty of being a certified Passivhaus designer. I have the feeling that at the moment there's more bigger market. People are looking for certified Passivhaus designers or builders, and they're really seeking out the people that are certified. Good. So what are the benefits as a little summary now, because that was quite a lot. The design process can be streamlined. We really know what we're going to do. The certification process gives us certainty, and we can apply to future projects. So there is now a process that you can apply to each of the projects, and the more projects you do, the quicker it gets and the more affordable it gets. Passivhaus gives us a control, as in us, the building professional, but also your client, gives them control over their building. And it can be applied to any building. So this is a little reminder. We talked about that in our first unit. It's not just residential buildings that can be certified Passivhaus. It can be any building. It can be high-rise buildings, tiny homes, anything that you want can be certified Passivhaus. As a little side note, because that question comes often, because when we talk about Passivhaus, often the solar passive comes up. And while solar passive can be really, really great if you have a good designer, the problem is that we're applying measures, but we can't quantify how useful they are. So if you have an experienced solar passive designer, beautiful, the house can work well, but they can't tell you exactly how well your house will perform. It's more an experience level. And Passivhaus, we can really say, these are the numbers, that's how your house will perform, and it's very reliable. We have this tool for that, the PHPP. I've already mentioned that, the Passivhaus planning packets, which gives you quick calculations, and it's a good tool for economical optimization. This is what it's called, Passivhaus planning package. It's an interactive design tool, and that's our building energy modeling software. It's Excel-based, so it's really quick with the results because it's a big spreadsheet. You put your numbers in and it gives you the numbers instantly. So that's why it makes such a good tool for comparing things, because you get quick results and you can quickly compare things. That's also the certification software for Passivhaus. So you need to use that if you want to certify your home, and you can do economical optimization of your project. Good. So that were the benefits. Now, just a little overview again of the Passivhaus standard, what we want to get to and how we get there. So the outcome of our Passivhaus is a thermal comfort zone of 20 to 25 degrees and 30 to 60% relative humidity. We learned that also in Unit 1. In our indoor environment, we want to have less than 80% relative humidity at any surface to reduce the mold risk. And for our air quality, we want to stay below the 1,000 parts per million of CO2. That is considered a healthy and clean indoor air condition, and that's what we want to achieve in Passivhaus. To get these outcomes, we're allowed to use a certain amount of energy, and that is set in stone in our Passivhaus standard. So we have a certain amount of energy that we're allowed for our heating. So our heating demand, 15 kilowatt hours per square meter a year, or our heating load, 10 watts per square meter. Don't want to go too deep into those numbers. I've talked a little bit about the standard in our last unit, but I'm not going to go too deep into that. If you're really interested, catch one of our other courses where I go a little bit deeper into what that means, difference between demand and load, and so on. So we're also allowed a certain amount of energy for our cooling. And there's other things that are in the standard that I'm not going to go into depth in here. But just this means that we allowed a certain amount of energy to reach that outcome. And we also have our quality control. So we need have our air tightness level achieved at 0.6 air exchanges per hour at 50 Pascal. We need our HRV commissioning report, project documentation, and our thermal bridge analysis. And in the end, we have our certifier that looks over our shoulder and lets us know that everything's going well. Good, so that was a little bit of an overview. I want to talk very briefly about the Passivhaus community, because I feel that Passivhaus really is a community. It feels like it's still a little space, and people are very generous with their knowledge. So they're sharing, exchanging ideas. So use that collective knowledge, because as a collective, we can be better, smarter, and greater than what we would be as an individual. You can join for that our Spa Hub. The Spa Hub, I introduced that to you briefly. If you're joining us, you can get access to member discussions, a map to locate other Passivhaus professionals, and an opportunity to advertise your services. So please jump onto smartbusacademy.com. That's where you can find it. Or if you need CPD points as a professional, we've got some available on our website as well. So there's a Passivhaus series with, I think, 5 or 6 parts at the moment. So from how Passivhaus began to health, sustainability, affordability, but they are more available. So please jump on our website and you can find them. It's a very good way to increase your knowledge about Passivhaus, but also gain some CPD points at the same time. Good. And I want to finish with a little summary on how this benefits you as a professional, as an architect, maybe building designer or engineer who's looking at this and interested in Passivhaus and sustainability. And we've picked out 3 problems that we can solve for you with becoming a certified Passivhaus designer or going the route of Passivhaus. So the first one is, are you already looking into sustainable design? And then the answer is that Passivhaus delivers sustainable buildings that are healthy and comfortable, and the energy consumption is accurately calculated, and you can optimize your design for energy efficiency and affordability. Another advantage of that is that you're not getting underpriced by designers offering a lower quality, because the standard is defined. So when you tell your client you get Passivhaus, that's what you get. No one can sort of cheat on that, because you have to fulfill the Passivhaus standard. The second question, are you looking for a recognized energy standard? So for that, I want to tell you that the European Union already requires NZEB buildings, so near zero energy buildings, since 2019 for any new builds. And the Passivhaus standard can achieve this standard, the NZEB standard. There's slightly difference in regulations, but Passivhaus can sometimes even be higher than NZEB requirement. Now, obviously, we're not in the EU, but I have the feeling that in a few years, this will happen all over the world, that we have to comply with a certain standard. And if you are getting on top of Passivhaus now, you will be the leader in the game once it comes to that level. There's also some links if you want to read a little bit more about that in your own time. And the third question is, do you want to increase the value of every client? And who wouldn't probably want to do that? You can charge more per client because you spend more time on the design process, but now you might say, hey, but then it makes it more expensive for my client. Isn't quite true, because the more time you spend on design makes the building process cheaper. We're just shifting the costs slightly. So we're spending a bit more time on design, and we're making the building process cheaper, and it avoids problems down the line and makes the building process easier and smoother, and we're not coming across so many problems. Good. So that's what we can solve for you. What could be the next step for you? If you already have some previous knowledge of Passivhaus, then you might need the training to gain the certification, and you can jump onto one of our certification courses straight away. Contact our team if you're interested. And our self-paced, the courses are all self-paced now. They're well structured and flexible. You can organize your own timetable. And I think in a time where everyone's very busy, this is a big advantage, that you can do it in your own time and you then join us for the exam. Or if you're not there yet, then you can just look on our website. There is another part that is called What is Passivhaus Design? So another short course where you can learn more about Passivhaus, where I go deeper into the Passivhaus principles, the components, and explain a little bit more how Passivhaus works. So what is our responsibility as a professional? As a reminder, the building industry plus the use of buildings are the biggest drivers for climate change, and we need to create sustainable buildings. So that's a big one. On top of that, people spend over 90% of their time indoors, and we as the professionals are responsible to create a healthy and comfortable indoor environments for them. So there are 2 really, really good reasons to build a Passivhaus. And I really hope I have inspired you today to take the next step into the right direction, and that maybe to do the next course, that maybe to get certified, that may just be to rethink your structures around what you're doing in the building industry. So you can jump onto our next course, What is Passivhaus Design, or straight onto one of our certification courses. As I said, please contact the team if you're interested. They're very happy to help you. And that's all for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I see you again very soon. Thank you.